Centre for Inquiry, Canada's premier venue for secular humanists, atheists, skeptics, and free thinkers.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, every single one of you, for being here for this very special event we have for you tonight. To start off, I'd like to introduce a few of the people who made this possible. Justin Trottier, spokesperson for CFI Canada. Kevin Smith, president of the board. and Jamie Warner, official engagement officer. Now, to start it off, let me get Justin to the microphone.
Now you clap, thank you.
Go for it.
So before we get started with our exciting event, I'm going to bore you for about 5 minutes, so start with apologies for that. We at Centre for Inquiry have a pretty broad mission, and I think there's sometimes some uncertainty about exactly what it is we stand for. And I think I also see a lot of new people here, so I think both of those factors justify me just introducing you to the organization and, if I may, giving you some reasons why we would love to have you as members of CFI and as donors and contributors to our important operations. I'm going to ask Jamie if maybe she can go through the slides, because I'm not quite sure how to do that. Yes, we need tech help. Sorry. So for those of you who don't know, broadly speaking, we're an educational charity. We advance critical thinking, scientific literacy, skeptical inquiry, church-state separation, and freedom of thought. So those are some pretty big objectives. And the other thing that we do on top of that is actually providing a community and a voice for those in Canada who identify with a growing movement, atheists, agnostics, humanists, skeptics, and freethinkers. So I always describe our mission as kind of twofold. One, it's providing that community. So events like these do that, or social services for people in need do that. But it's also putting forward and advancing an agenda, a political, a social, and an educational agenda to affect public policy. We're supported here in Canada and internationally by a really stellar cast of advisory fellows and leaders, academics, activists, authors, and artists. And yes, some of them are in this room and very excited apparently to be on this list. So, good to see you there, Jeff. So we have people who are very broad-based in terms of the fields, in terms of the occupations that we draw from. I think that's one of the strengths of CFI. So I'm sure you recognize several of the folks here from whether they've been on television themselves advocating secular humanism or church-state separation, or you maybe even see them at other CFI events, because they tend to be very actively involved in our operations. And just so you're aware, this is part of an international movement. The Centre for Inquiry is by far the largest international organization, NGO, for free thought, for humanism, for secularism. We have representation at the United Nations. We're active in at least 20 countries. That number might have increased in the last couple of years. And our international cast of advisors are among the leading lights of free thought around the world, and we're very, very proud. You can see some of those very recognizable faces up on the screen. I'm just going to try to get through this rather quickly. As those of you know who have been to events like these, we are very active, and not just in Toronto. We are truly a national organization. Those are just some snapshots of some of the bigger events that we've hosted since we were founded in 2007 all across Canada. And one of the things we're known for is really giving a voice to our community through ongoing major media attention in the mainstream press. Kevin, who was introduced here to my left, the president of our board, is actually the secular humanist representative, secular humanist columnist for the Ottawa Citizen. So almost every week, or perhaps every week, he will be in the Ottawa Citizen, often the print edition, talking about ethics and religion and offering a counterbalancing voice on those diverse issues. We've also been in the Globe and Mail. There's an online faith and ethics panel there, which CFI was the secular humanist voice for. We are, myself and a number of other spokespeople, often on the John Oakley Show. on Tuesday mornings. I don't know if any of you listen to that. Culture Wars is the name of the segment, and we're often representing humanism and atheism and debating, some interesting characters, people who think quite differently from many of those in this room. I'll leave it at that. We're also very active on campus. Here we are on campus, and that's no exception. We're involved in over 30 university and college groups from coast to coast. In fact, the International Blasphemy Rights Day, which is now an international, as the name suggests, movement to promote freedom of speech and the right to choose to blaspheme or to engage in expressions some might deem offensive, that actually started in Canada, in Toronto in 2008 as the Campaign for Free Expression. So we're very proud to see that really grow legs and become so international in scope. I want to touch very quickly on three key reasons why I think CFI is unique, why I think it's vital, and why I think it's so important that all of you in this room leave today as members and or contributors to this organization. One is that we provide vital support to those in need. So these are not doctored photos. These are actual depictions of very unfortunate, tragic things that have happened to atheists around the world. There are some examples written here about the plight of atheists, and there aren't examples like this, thankfully, here in Canada, but this stuff still happens in our world. We have a mob who burnt a man to death for being a blasphemer. We have Alexander On, it's a well-known case in Indonesia, who was beaten and imprisoned for posting on Facebook. He's an atheist. I mean, I do something like that almost every few hours, and they're in Indonesia. I mean, this gets you tortured and put in jail. It's almost surreal, and it is surreal. So the takeaway message is, as depressing as this is, there is something we can do. In Canada, like it or not, our government has created an Office of Religious Freedom, and we decided to try to be a part of this process to make it as effective as it could be. So we've met now with the Office of Religious Freedom staff, the Ambassador for Religious Freedom. We have been taken on, CFI has, as a strategic partner. Now what this means, it could mean anything. And unless CFI is able to really take advantage of the opportunity that we're given to push the government to make some noise about the plight of people like this, and there are many other cases, this government clearly will not do much to support atheists. And why do I say that? Well, look at what Minister Baird, Minister of Foreign Affairs, is on record stating. There are videos of this. We don't see agnosticism and atheism as being in need of defense in the same way persecuted religious minorities are. We speak of the right to worship and practice in peace, not the right to stay away from places of worship. I kid you not, this is actually the words from this man's mouth. And then in a talk that he gave in the States, in front of mostly religious folks, he said, we know that freedom of religion does not mean freedom from religion. So unless we do something, and there aren't a lot of groups to do it, there will be no representation when it comes to the plight of people like this. The government sends out media releases about persecuted religious minorities, and we applaud them for doing that. That's a big issue. But even in countries where it's mostly atheists who are being persecuted, when they send out their media releases, they mention the Christians, they mention the Muslims, they never mention the word atheists. Somebody's got to do something about that. Second of the three big things, CFI pushes for equality. This is somewhat closer to home, well, at least there's a component of it, that is. CFI was involved in pushing for the government to ratify Bill 13. This was the anti-bullying legislation to require that where there was student interest, a gay-straight alliance would not be prohibited in publicly funded schools, including Catholic publicly funded schools. Bill 13 is now law. We were involved in a large coalition, but we were one of those who performed in front of the government and offered a testimony to see this legislation passed. And this is part of an international movement again. We were part of a coalition to oppose the Ugandan Kill the Gays bill, which I think most of you know what I'm talking about there. And this is still an issue, but the bill was unpassed when Parliament recessed a couple of years ago, so that's obviously good. We're involved in annual international pride parades and in Interpride, which is an international pride festival, where we were representing CFI talking about why humanists care about equality rights for gays and lesbians just this past year. And just a quick quote, this is Charles McVitie. Does anybody know who this man is? Somebody there knows him very well. Well, I know him very well because I have to debate him almost every Tuesday morning. And this is what he said about gay-straight alliances. "We are here to protect our children." He was saying this at a rally that he hosted. "We don't want homosexual clubs led by homosexuals against the will of the parents." Well, CFI debates people like that. We go on the radio and TV and we stand up to that kind of thing, but we can't do it without your help. And the third thing, CFI works to protect citizens from fraud and dangerous misinformation. Maybe that's the one that's closest to the topic of tonight's talk, so it's good that I'll conclude there. We expose pseudoscience from harmful alternative medicine. For example, we're part of a lawsuit against Shoppers Drug Mart and Boron Laboratories for selling homeopathic medicine, specifically oxylococcinum. I pronounced it correctly. It's like the first time. Hard word. So that's a long, ongoing case, but it's really important that when it comes to protecting consumers from deceitful marketing that makes fraudulent claims about the efficacy, I knew I mispronounced something of that, of these homeopathic remedies, that somebody is there to confront that. And similarly, we have something called Think Again TV. It's on YouTube. I'd encourage you to check that out. It's a show on YouTube where we look through investigative reports on things like alternative medicine. And I think our most popular video to date wasn't on alt med, but it was exposing Peter Popoff, the so-called faith healer. We went to one of his faith healings a couple of years ago in Toronto, and we showed some of his dirty tricks, and that video has gotten quite a bit of attention. It's been mirrored several times, so I invite you to check that out. And we do get some attention from time to time. You might remember some of that stuff. So lastly, here it comes. I want to ask all of you to please support these values, these principles that I think most of us in this room share. Religious charities, we look this up because it's very good to tell people this when you're asking them to financially support you. Did you know that religious charities on average receive 2.5 times more than educational charities? Looked at when you look at all religious charities versus all educational charities. Even small religions like Sikh and Baha'i faith groups pull in over $10 million a year while representing under 1% of the population. New Age and alternative medical practitioners are a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. CFI, which represents, by some estimates, 1/4 of Canadians, maybe 1/3 of Canadians under 25, at least in terms of advocating atheism and secularism and humanism, these really vital values that I think most of us share. We pull in a budget of about 2% compared to even those small religious demographic groups. So we have a lot of work, both advocating critical thinking and church-state separation, but we really can't do it without membership and financial support from all of you. So please help us to represent your voice better. Your voice is our voice. CFI is the most influential educational, political, and social force for skepticism, secularism, and freedom of inquiry. Please help us to represent your voice and to better defend our shared values. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. So I'm Kevin Smith, a volunteer and chair of CFI Canada. I'd like to thank Justin, the founder of CFI Canada, for his presentation. I'd also like to thank Jamie Warner for all her assistance in planning this event. Jamie, you did a great job with the Richard Dawkins Lawrence Krauss event in May, and you've done a fantastic job this time as well, so thank you for all your help. I'd like to also introduce Sergio Delera. I love that name. Who is more interested in my name, Smith. He recently took over the reins from Jamie as our CFI Toronto director. Welcome to CFI, Sergio, and thank you for all your help with the event this evening. Thank you. I would also like to welcome all of you here to our CFI Canada Talk with Penn Jillette. I have seen the Penn Teller show, stage show twice now. Has anyone seen the stage show? If you haven't, I would highly recommend it. It's incredible. What impressed me most about the show, besides the incredible magic that I witnessed, actually so incredible that I sometimes think I need to hand in my skeptical card. I almost think they might have supernatural powers. Almost. It's amazing. The thing that impressed me, and I really appreciate about Penn Teller, is that being extremely popular across a diverse demographic, having performed in front of hundreds of thousands of people, some who may have never thought about thinking critically,
or may not have a skeptical mind, is the way their show introduces skeptical and critical thinking in an entertaining way. Never believe anything without investigating it yourself. Don't take someone else's word. Think for yourself. This is critically important in an age where there are too many false idols. Sylvia Browne, John Edwards, James von Prague come to mind. Penn's complete bio is too long for me to mention in the short time I have. An Emmy Award winner, he's appeared on Howard Stern, Piers Morgan, Glenn Beck, Dancing with the Stars, very diverse, David Letterman, Oprah, and the very popular Penn and Teller Bullshit. And I thought saying Oprah and then bullshit after that might be appropriate. His book, Every Day is an Atheist Holiday, which was on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 weeks, is now in paperback, and we just happen to have copies here that he will be happy to sign after his talk. Penn is a really busy guy, but he's been extremely generous with CFI Canada. We really appreciate that, and now I would like to introduce you to a very good guy who is about to play a very bad guy in the movie Director's Cut, Penn Jillette.
Thank you so much for the welcome. You know, I want to start by talking about, very briefly, about two people who had a really big effect on my life. You probably know who I'm thinking about. Bob Dylan and Glenn Beck. Bob Dylan, because every time I do one of these things, every time I talk to like CFIs in other cities, or talk at TAM, or talk at a Randy thing, or talk at an atheist thing, I always think of one Bob Dylan line that sticks with me, which is, no reason talking to me, same as talking to you. A lot of times I talk to people who have a lot of people who disagree with, and they want to see kind of sort of what an atheist looks like, and too bad for you, I show them this. And it's kind of like a big surprise. There's kind of like a little bit of interest in someone who is an atheist and self-identifies as an atheist. But here I don't have that. Here I think you all, no reason talking to me, same as talking to you. You kind of, I think a lot of us are in agreement on a lot of the big points. So I'll talk about something that I think is a little bit unusual, in that one of the people that had a huge effect on me was Glenn Beck. And I like to mention Glenn Beck to atheist skeptic organizations because he is so completely and utterly hated. He's also completely wrong about, as far as I can tell, everything. And he is also a friend of mine. And he is also the reason I wrote the first book about atheism, God No, and the second book, Every Day is an Atheist Holiday. Both of them kind of go to Glenn Beck. And I started doing Glenn Beck's show when he was on CNN before he went, completely crazy. And I was booked on there. And I was taken with a few things about him. And we all know what he's wrong about. We all know what we dislike about him. But what we like about him, what I like about him, is I think more interesting and a little more profound. There's some really good things about Glenn Beck. First of all, Glenn Beck can take a punch. Glenn Beck will let you say anything to him. When I was first on his show, he wanted to talk about me having a showbiz experience, and he wanted to kind of start out with some gentle ribbing. So he said, my guest here tonight went to clown college. He went to Ringling Brothers Clown College. And that's true. And I said to him, yeah, Glenn, I went to clown college and you're a Mormon, so we're both wearing funny underwear, but for different reasons. Now, if you do that line on another man's show, there's a rule in Carney, and essentially I'm Carney trash. There's a rule in Carney that you never play another man's game. And another man or a woman's game. When you go on someone else's show, you're really doing that. I mean, you step out of line slightly with Bill Maher, he will take you down, and you will not be on the show for a long time again. But Glenn Beck, it seemed to me, and I found this out, that I could say anything to Glenn Beck, and he would let me say it, and then have me back on again. He really firmly believes in the marketplace of ideas. And it's crazy to have someone that you disagree with so deeply that has that belief that you can keep talking, that the talking can keep going on no matter what, and someone that'll actually give a forum to someone he disagrees with. Now, many people, and I'm sure there are some in this room, and maybe there's even most in this room, have trashed me for going on Glenn Beck at all. Trashed me even more for saying that Glenn Beck is a friend of mine. Tommy Smothers is perhaps one of my earliest heroes that endured the longest. Tommy Smothers, when he was a comedian with Dickie Smothers, I listened to those records, I mean, right from the Aesop fables and the early Purple Onion records when I was 11 or 12, was a hero. And then like George Carlin, he moved from this kind of comedy hero and just silly to a emotional hero, and then to a political hero, a moral hero. And Tommy Smothers has always been a guiding light to me. And I went on a show that Paul Provenza, who I made the Aristocrats with, a show called The Green Room. And I was on that show with Tommy Smothers and Martin Mull, because Paul Provenza wanted to have a show with two of my heroes on. He did it for a favor to me. And also having a show on TV that had 4 out-of-the-closet atheists all talking, which is pretty cool, you know. Martin Mull, as you all know, or maybe some of you don't know, did Jesus Christ Football Star. Jesus is easy, just get down on your knees. Which he would do overtly atheist songs. Martin Mull, Randy Newman, Frank Zappa. When I was a child growing up in Massachusetts, those are my real atheist heroes. And of course, Tommy Smothers on the Smothers Comedy Brothers Hour also had a lot of real strong atheist points. And when I brought up the fact that I'd gone to the Glenn Beck show, Tommy Smothers, my hero, just ripped me a new fucking asshole. He went fucking apeshit on me. And I just took it. Well, for a couple reasons. One reason is he's a hero of mine. And the second reason is he was right. By going on the Glenn Beck show, and by just appearing there, and by smiling, and by listening to what he says, I am giving him power. I am giving part of my image to him. You know, it's the bullshit of the Aboriginals in Australia that say when you take a picture of you, they steal part of your soul. Well, poetically, that's right, you know. And part of my soul was being given to Glenn Beck. So when Tommy Smothers beat the shit out of me, I just took it and said, yes, you're right. And then off stage, he did not say this on camera, but off stage he said, you know, if Hitler had a talk show, you would go on it. And I said, yeah, I'd go on it, and I'd also tell the fucking truth. Because he is completely right. He is completely and absolutely right. But there's the other side of the coin, which I think is also right, is I was the first and only person to say on the Glenn Beck show, there is no God. Simple, declarative, true sentence. So you gotta weigh those things. I mean, which is better? Yes, I'm on his show, so what the fuck's he doing on the show? But second, the Glenn Beck audience heard that sentence from someone that Glenn Beck was smiling and nodding and respecting. So I think that both of them are kind of true. So Glenn Beck was talking on the radio, and I want to explain a little bit more about Glenn Beck. I'm going to talk a lot about Glenn Beck, and the reason is because you're an atheist group. If this were a Christian group, which I also talked to, it would all be about atheism, and Glenn Beck wouldn't be mentioned. But I think I have something to say that might surprise you. So Glenn Beck does 4 hours of radio and then an hour of TV every day. Now, what people do not understand is that if you do talking for a living, and you talk for 2 hours a day in public for 2 weeks, you have exhausted every single thing you have to say. And then your career will go on probably another 25 years. And that 25 years, you will be talking out your ass. That's true for Howard Stern, it's true for Bill Maher, it's true for everyone that sat in front of a microphone. It's also true for Glenn Beck. So Glenn Beck would get himself into convoluted corners, just like Howard Stern does. And I have this strong feeling that any time you hear something from someone who's on radio or TV a lot, when you hear what they've said, it is automatically out of context. And I don't care how long you listen to. If you listen to a full half hour that's around that sentence, it's still out of context. Because what people do who are on radio or TV a lot, Howard Stern, Glenn Beck, good examples, is they develop a relationship with their audience that is not purely artistic. It's not a play, it's not an essay. It's a little more of an emotional relationship. It's a little more like your batshit crazy uncle. Anything you pull out of there does not include that whole long story of all the favors he did, all the things he said that were right, all the things that touch your heart, all the relationships you have. So I don't ever listen to Glenn Beck, and I don't ever listen to Howard Stern, but I do know that when someone tells me something that they said, I just dismiss it instantly. Because if I want to judge what they said, I kind of, sort of, got to listen for at least a year. So Glenn Beck gets himself backed into a corner and says something batshit crazy, which just means he's talking. And he is trying to defend, and forgive me if I get a little USA on you here, but he is defending the idea of the 10 Commandments being put up in government or public buildings. That's what his goal is with this hunk of talking. So he talks about how the 10 Commandments are more than just Christian. And they're more than just Judeo-Christian. And Glenn Beck then says that he believes that his friend, Penn Jillette, welcome to Boo when it says friend and Penn Jillette with Glenn Beck, that his friend Penn Jillette would also agree that a lot of the ideas in the 10 Commandments were universal and were moral. And that it could be put up on the government walls because Penn Jillette, who was the only atheist he ever considers, because Penn Jillette would agree with big hunks of this, that it's okay, it's universal, it's truth that we're all aiming for. And what's fascinating about that argument is that Glenn Beck has just given up the entire argument for God. One of the things that we end up doing when we're defending atheism is we end up talking about morality. We end up talking about how can someone be moral without God? How can someone be moral without a supreme being looking over them for reward and punishment? They're always talking about that morality, and can we have it without God? And my favorite question, and when I talk to religious groups, I get this all the time, and I wait for it because I have an answer. Some of the other ones I kind of try to avoid. It's very important. You'll notice this later. I want to give you also a little bit of an insight into show business. When we go to the Q&A period in about a half an hour or so, you'll notice that I always answer the question I want to answer and not the question that's asked. The most important thing you can learn in public speaking. But they will stand up and they will ask, if there is no God, what stops you from raping and killing everyone you want to rape and kill? What stops you from doing that? And my answer is always, you're absolutely right. I have raped and killed every single person I want to rape and kill. And that number is 0, you evil motherfucker! It's 0! It's a goose egg! And if your number is a positive integer, sign up for prison! Get the fuck out of our society! Because morality is more important than God. And we know that because you stupid motherfuckers say the sentence, God is good. And if morality is not more important than God, you don't get to say that. It doesn't mean anything. Unless there's some good that we believe in, some morality, then you can't say God is good. Then you just say God, whatever he does is okay. And according to the Bible, it kind of is. He does everything bad. So Glenn Beck has, by saying the Ten Commandments, could also speak for an atheist. He has said that there is morality that exists outside of God. He has made and won or lost, whichever side you want to be on, the argument for God as a moral force in our society. And then he said to me, would I write the Atheist Ten Commandments? He gave me a writing assignment. We've spent a lot of time talking about how stupid Glenn Beck is. He gave me a writing assignment, and I did it. So however stupid Glenn Beck is, I'm a little stupider. Of mice and men, I'm the one following the directions. So I wrote the Ten Commandments from not the atheist point of view, because that, I can't speak for atheists. I can't speak for even one of you in any way. But for myself, Penn Jillette's Ten Commandments. And Glenn Beck was an essay, and Glenn Beck took that essay, and he was doing these rallies. These are the rallies that I think when Canadians want to feel really good about themselves, they show footage of Glenn Beck having rallies, and Las Vegas. And everybody in Canada goes, well, we're doing better than that. Okay, the only jazz person we have is Oscar Peterson, but we don't have that. He had these rallies, tens of thousands. I probably, when you put them all together, hundreds of thousands of people that came to see him. And he gave them out booklets. And in the booklets were all these psycho essays from his psycho friends about all sorts of stuff. And everything, you don't want to argue about, the gold standard or healthcare or any other of the stuff that drives you guys crazy. All that was in the essays there. And then also, he printed my essay. Absolutely, well, actually, no, he made one editorial change. I think they put a paragraph break in because one of the ones was a little long, and they didn't want it to orphan on another page. But no content changes whatsoever. He just put that out there to his people and said, here's the atheist point of view of morality. So I went on Glenn Beck and said, there is no God. And I will say to Tommy Smothers that he's completely right. I gave Glenn Beck a lot of my power by doing that. But I also think that what I got in return was not nothing. I think that we don't only have to talk to people who agree with us completely. Although tonight, I guess I kind of will. But I think it's okay to talk about the marketplace of ideas. And that brings me to another thing that I say that's a little controversial among atheists. There's this quality, and I guess none of you have it, or you wouldn't be here, but I still want to address it because it annoys me so much, is there are atheists who say, I don't mind people being religious, but I hate it when they proselytize. Can't they just shut up about it? Can't they just, I don't want to be cornered at a party and told about the words of Jesus Christ. They should not proselytize. And I say exactly the opposite. If you believe something, if you believe, for instance, that everlasting life is possible, then not talking about that is completely immoral. I love the fact that they proselytize. And I also believe the quickest way to find out if you're wrong about something is to say it everywhere. Tweet it, lay it out there, say it at every party possible so that you get the shit beat out of you. And you may find out where you're wrong. So I love the fact that people proselytize. They even like when they come to the door, knock on the door and want to talk to you about Jesus Christ. I like that. Sometimes I invite them in and I actually talk to them about religion. From my point of view too, I get to talk back to them. And sometimes I'm not in the mood to talk to someone about Jesus Christ in my home that particular afternoon. And then I just simply strip naked, open the door and say, "Come on in!" I'm not bluffing. One, I really did that. Two, I'd love to have them come in. We would sit there, we would talk. Maybe, who knows, maybe I can fuck the living Jesus out of them. Who knows? Those skinny ties get me so fucking hard. Just for the record, I've only done that twice. Neither time did they come in. We'll come back later. Thank you. So Glenn Beck and I managed to be friends in spite of our differences. And we managed to proselytize without manipulating, without trying to manipulate. And the difference between proselytizing and manipulating, I am not convinced is a difference that exists outside of my head. I may really, I'm wrong on everything, but I may really be demonstratively wrong on this. But there is a distinction that I think is very important in the skeptic community. Phil Plait, who is also a friend of mine, and who I brought on my radio show to argue with Joe Rogan about whether we went to the moon or not. Come on, Phil, come on the show. Joe Rogan says you didn't go to the moon. You know space stuff. Why don't you two argue? It'll be a lot of fun. Phil said, sure. Joe Rogan wiped the floor with him. Every single person who was in my radio show went, well, I guess we didn't go to the moon. Joe Rogan is sexy and funny and smart and quick and humble, and Phil Plait's a dipshit. Damn, we didn't go to the moon. We had to sneak in, me and Godot, who was my co-host, and help Phil Plait. Then he came back and did it again. And of course, Phil Plait was right, and Phil Plait is smarter, and Phil Plait is not a dipshit. And then Phil Plait went to one of the TAM conferences a bunch of years ago and did, to me, the most appalling speech I have ever heard in the skeptic community. He did a speech called Don't Be a Dick. He did a speech where he said that people should talk to other people a certain way to try to convince them, to try to welcome them in, and to try to get them to change their minds. I hate that so much. I hate so much the lack of respect and the lack of love for humanity to think that there are techniques to win friends and influence people. Incidentally, Charlie Manson's favorite book. Really was. He followed Dale Carnegie very close. I just read the Manson biography, and it's all full of this Dale Carnegie win friends and influence people. And I go, yeah, Chuck, that's the way you did it, yeah. Well, it worked. You know, he had a family out of it. And what bothers me about that, and of course Phil is right, you should be kind and you should not be hostile and aggressive and insulting unless you're feeling hostile and aggressive and insulting. When I am talking to someone and I am having an argument or a discussion, and I can sense in any way, at any level, that they are trying to work me, that they are trying to manipulate me, I just shut down completely. When someone says to me, fuck you, you're wrong, when someone says no, when someone says any of that, my heart beats faster, I get nervous, all of that. But boy, when they say to me, that's a really interesting point of view. Is there anything else you can think of that could explain that other than what you're saying? Let's work through this together, shall we? Is it possible, I'm just saying, that there's some other explanation for something that a drunken farmer sees above a swamp in Arkansas besides alien intelligence? Is there anything you can think of, possibly, that could be that? Is it possible? Whenever someone does that kind of shit to me, I go crazy. And every time I've changed my mind about an issue, which is, I'll tell you, if you want to be known as open-minded and willing to change your mind, just be wrong a lot. It gets really easy. It's the same way if you want to lose an awful lot of weight. First, gain an awful lot of weight. Simple. When I want to lose 50 pounds, I gain 50 pounds, lose it back, I'm done. Same thing with learning to be humble. Start out being wicked wrong on everything. Makes it really easy. So what I want out of skeptics is I want them to say whatever they feel, whatever they want, whatever they can prove, whatever they're trying to prove, whatever they're worried about. And I want them to say it from whoever they are and whatever point of view they happen to have. So I have this feeling that you can proselytize without having this manipulation thing going on. And I've looked up, just for fun, the pages that the religious people do. You know, the how to convert an atheist, arguments for atheists. I've gone to the people that try to convince skeptics about fortune telling. I've gone to the liberals that try to convince libertarians, the conservatives that try to convince libertarians, any sane person that tries to convince libertarians. And they all have that technique that is so insulting to human beings. So deeply insulting to think that there is a magic key that gets your point across. That there is some way to say what you have that doesn't start in your heart, but starts from someone else that will help you turn that person to your point of view. Maybe there is, and even if it works, I'm against it. I'm against it because it's condescending and it's hateful, and it doesn't allow for a big possibility that I think Glenn Beck allows for. I think when Glenn Beck and I are talking, we both have the remote, and I mean remote, and that's okay, but the remote possibility that we're wrong. When you go into a discussion with someone who is a Christian or someone who believes in psychics, if you don't have somewhere in your heart the possibility that you could be wrong, then you might as well shut up. And if you have a battle plan for how you're going to turn this person around and how you can kind of suck them into your camp and how you can be kind and how you can say all this, I believe that the moment you have that plan, you are a pig. And that doesn't mean that you're not supposed to be polite. It doesn't mean that the only way you talk to these people is to say motherfucker. It doesn't mean the only way you talk to these people is to say you're wrong. you know? But it does mean that whatever style you have, if you are genteel and soft-spoken, or if you're a big, loud asshole, you should be that. You should go through that. So that's my sense of how to proselytize without being manipulative. How to proselytize without thinking about winning, but rather just what's saying in your heart. And I'm not talking about, you know, hear the other person's point of view and be really, I'm not talking about any of that stuff, you know? I'm talking about just not having a battle plan, so there's a chance that you listen to what the other person is saying. And if you feel angry, get angry. If you feel like shutting up, shut up, do all of that. We did a show called Penn Teller Bullshit. We did for 8 years. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. Because people ask me really often what I was wrong about on bullshit. And there's a long list. And they also ask about something I said in the press many times, that we wanted to do a bullshit on bullshit. We wanted to do a final show where we pointed out everything that was wrong. Starting out with, if you're going to attack Jenny McCarthy for talking about vaccinations, why the fuck wouldn't you attack two magicians from Las Vegas, one of whom didn't finish high school? What the fuck is he doing talking about it? We were set to pitch bullshit. 2001, early September. We had our meetings all set. We were going to go to about, I don't know what the number is, you know, 7, 8 TV stations, you know, Showtime, HBO, and then also AMC and all that shit. If they were around then, I don't really remember. We had a bunch of people to pitch to. And it wasn't called bullshit then, it was called, you know, the unnamed Penn and Teller Skeptic Project, which Penn knows will be called bullshit. And we were supposed to pitch right when the Twin Tower attack happened. We were supposed to be pitching right around then. We were in Vegas. And then we all decided, kind of in the whole Western world, that what we really should do was go on with our lives. And I wish we had done more of that and less revenge stuff, but that's a different issue. So we went in a week after 9/11, or 2 weeks after, to pitch bullshit. So we went in after horrible, frightening tragedy to pitch a comedy show with a lot of naked people that would tell people not to have faith. Kind of a hard sell. You know? And it turned out we were wrong, because a nutty thing happened on 9/11, and I don't think, some of the statistics are starting to come out now, and I'm not sure, I can't prove this. A lot of the stuff is anecdotal, but I know that right after 9/11, I talked to George Carlin, who was a friend of mine and another hero right up there with Tommy Smothers. Tommy's not listening, okay, a little above Tommy Smothers. And George and I were both out of the closet atheists. And yet, when 9/11 happened, we got way more atheist. And as a lot of USA television talked about how the nation was running the churches and doing that, every single person that I knew was saying that they were going to be more aggressively atheist. They weren't going to back down. And there was a sense there that what is called tolerance, which is another word that I hate, because tolerance to me is just condescending. You know, oh, you have that opinion, that's fine, I know better. Great. I think you should be always arguing. And it turns out that we got the show, and then I felt 2 or 3 years later really guilty about it. I was guilty about it because part of my pitch was cynical. And boy, if I have a pet peeve, it's with the word cynical and the word skeptical being mixed up. When Bill Maher says with pride that he's cynical, I'm sickened. I believe I am one of the least cynical people ever. And I go on radio interviews and they'll say, we're having Penn Jillette on who's really, really cynical about everything. I go crazy because I'm skeptical, but I have the most sickening Pollyanna attitude toward life getting better and people being good and all of that. So the part of our pitch for bullshit was cynical because I talked in the pitch about A Hard Day's Night, the Beatles movie. There's a scene in A Hard Day's Night where George Harrison breaks away from the others, probably because they were too fucked up to shoot that day. He goes into a little area where they're doing testing, and they ask him about a TV show that's on that plays pop music. And he says that he watches it all the time. And the people who are figuring out how to sell shirts, I think it's shirts they're trying to sell on this show, are very, very happy about it. And then George Harrison says, yeah, we like to sit around and watch it and make rude comments and laugh. And it was the George Harrison theory from that movie that when I watched, one of the many, many, new digitized versions of A Hard Day's Night, that scene just screamed out at me because I realized that when you see the ratings for these ghost shows and you see the ratings for John Edward when he was on or any of that shit, you always look at the ratings, you don't know how many people are watching just to make fun of it, just to hate it. As a matter of fact, my good friend, and by now, you have no idea what kind of person could come after that, right? And I really could be saying now, my good friend Jeffrey Dahmer. But I'll believe this next sentence gets the same kind of reaction that Glenn Beck gets, except with different audiences. My good friend Lawrence O'Donnell, who's on MSNBC, really does say that he is sure that at least 10% of his audience watches him just to hate him. Just to hate him. And Lawrence is a different kind of guy than me. That doesn't bother him. He's thrilled about it. He still gets paid. He doesn't care. But I went and pitched bullshit by saying, and there will be religious people, and there will be believers who will watch Penn and Teller bullshit in order to hate us, laugh at us, disagree. And I gave this cynical little speech that, and you as the TV station will make money off this, so that's okay, that's great. And we did it, we did bullshit. And we got ready for the hate mail. And we got ready to do that cynical thing, which I really hope I never do again, because you'll feel good for a moment, and then it rips me apart. Is I waited to get the hate mail and then, laugh at it and be above it, and you stupid assholes. And then the hate mail started coming in. We did a show on creationism, a show on the Bible. We did the Elvis Didn't Do No Drugs, that whole show. And the hate mail was really, really nice. The hate mail was really, really kind, and the hate mail was really beautiful. The hate mail said stuff like, I am a follower of our Lord Jesus Christ. I believe in the Bible literally. Jesus Christ saved my life. I am praying for you. And thank you for doing the show. I like the fact that you speak your mind honestly. I like the passion. I like that it's funny. It makes me laugh. And I like topless women. That wasn't said, but it was so strongly implied. And Teller and I, we don't get many of them. There's a lot of filters to get to us. There really are. And I don't want to pretend that Teller and I are sitting reading every letter that comes in. People do look through them and not much filters down to us. It's not a question of protecting us, it's a question of protecting our time. You know, we just haven't got time to read these. But the ones that came through and the people that did read it and talked to us just said that the hate mail, the stuff that really disagreed with us, was really polite and really kind and really sweet, and yet didn't back down at all. They didn't say, well, maybe if you found the Lord Jesus Christ, maybe. They just said, I'm praying for you, you're wrong, but it's great that you're speaking out. And man, that changed my whole view of what my job is and Glenn Beck, and how you can have that marketplace of ideas. By doing shows that said in these words, Christians are assholes, I got this huge amount of respect for religious people. Huge amount of respect for Christians. And it was during this time that I was talking to Matt and Trey, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, South Park, and Book of Mormon. They were talking to me all the time about the Book of Mormon. This is right after they did their Richard Dawkins two-part show of hating atheists. And Richard Dawkins sometimes calls me to translate USA things into English things. Like I got an early draft of his book, and he had this whole page or two about somebody, some conservative, attacking some liberal who called him cheese eater. This cheese eater. And Richard Dawkins had written this whole thing about why they used the word cheese eater. What was bad about cheese eaters? Was it because there were so many liberals in Wisconsin? Was it because Vermont and Wisconsin had liberals and that's why this conservative was crazy? And he had a paragraph on this. And I got the book and I was reading it. It was in the early draft, and I'm reading through it, and I wrote Richard Dawkins, I think perhaps, if not the smartest email Richard Dawkins ever got, perhaps the shortest and changing his mind the quickest, which just said, Richard, rats eat cheese, love Penn. So Richard Dawkins also wanted to be illuminated on why Trey and Matt, who everybody who were atheists liked, hated him so. And I had to say to Richard, I did this in person. He didn't, I saw him in person. He said, what was up with that Trey and Matt show? And I said, well, I kind of worked on the show with them. They called me up and they put me on the speakerphone in the writer's room, and they wanted to have kind of an atheist point of view. So they talked about this, and I just couldn't knock them off the hating you thing. I tried, I like you and you're a friend, and you're a hero of mine, but I couldn't knock Trey and Matt off that. And then Richard said, kind of clawing for an argument, he said, my voice and the accent is entirely wrong. And I had to say, like, rats eat cheese, they were mocking you. Anyway, Trey and Matt were working on the Book of Mormon, and we were talking about this idea. And they were talking about, there's one thing that Matt Stone has said about the Book of Mormon that Trey has not said. I really do not want to. Anything I say about what Matt and Trey feel, please do not take as truth, because what they feel is very complex, and it comes across very clearly and very honestly in their work. And I believe that Trey and Matt are about the best artists and the best writers that we have. I guess I'll just say the USA instead of North America, because maybe there's someone better in Canada that I haven't seen. Possible. But Trey and Matt are the best we have. So I would never speak for them, because they speak for themselves better. But Matt said that what the Book of Mormon was a love letter to Mormonism written by an atheist. And I will tell you that Trey is not an atheist. Trey is raised by two atheists, but he does not consider himself an atheist. I think the reason he doesn't consider himself an atheist is because of drugs. He thinks different. As a matter of fact, Trey Parker believes that my biggest fault, and he has a whole list of faults that he finds in me, but he believes that my biggest fault is that I don't do drugs. He thinks that that's a horrible mistake that I've made. And I've never had a drink of alcohol, I've never done recreational drugs. Trey, however, has. So one day about 6-7 years ago, I went to the dentist, and there was a mistake made. The doctor was giving me, it was a serious root canal type thing, and he was giving me a very large amount of painkillers. And he said to his nurse, he said what he had given me. And she misunderstood that that was a command for what she should give me. So I got a double dose of painkillers. And I will tell you that when you are 6'7", 300 pounds, and in show business, people in the medical profession think that you can probably handle a lot of drugs. I cannot. So a quarter dose will make me loopy. So when I got this double horse dose, I was so fucking high. And on top of that, I hadn't really been high. So I didn't even know that I was high. But my wife said to me, as she was trying to get me home with 3 friends, and I was giggling and out of my mind, she said, you are really, really high. And I said to her, call Trey. So Trey Parker spent 3 hours with me, off my ass high. The only person that's ever done that. I don't remember any of it, but afterwards, Trey Parker said, you know, I was right. I like you so much more high. It's really great. Now, on the other hand, my friend, and I'm not going to talk about him much for reasons that'll be obvious. My friend Lou Reed, who I miss very much, is another one of the people that's a hero. Lou Reed once said to me, speaking on behalf of the whole world, which I often do, we don't want to see you on drugs. So there's the two sides. Trey Parker, Lou Reed wins. But there's a thing that I used to do before bullshit and before the kindness that I saw from people who disagreed with us strongly, and before I knew Glenn Beck. And that was this weird kind of pissing contest that atheists do. And I don't mean, sane atheists, but I mean atheists that have the sickness to be in show business. There's a bragging that I used to do, and I'm embarrassed about this. There's a bragging that I used to do about death threats. Part of the argument that you would give for why, part of the argument I would give about why my arguments were correct is I would pull out psycho death threat letters that I got and would have to call the police for, And, Trey and Matt certainly have plenty of them. And Richard Dawkins certainly has them. He probably beats us. And there was a certain kind of bragging about that. And after bullshit, and after getting to know Glenn Beck a little bit, and after all the kindness I've been shown, I've tried to stop doing that. And I've tried to not use that cheating, manipulative example because there are a few, very small number of mentally ill people who will write letters that are irresponsible and scary. And those people's beliefs don't matter, because once you're writing a letter threatening someone, it doesn't come from your belief system, it comes from the fact that you're mentally ill. So I'm trying to stop that. So all I'm really saying here when I talk to atheists is I try to give a little bit of a kind of a cheering for people like Glenn Beck and people who you disagree with very, very strongly, but who do believe that there is a marketplace of ideas and that the solution to bad ideas is just more ideas and more talk, and the answer to bad speech is more speech. And there's something popping up a lot in the skeptic community, which is all these how to talk to people and rules of conduct and all of that tries to make people fit into that kind of stuff. And I just want to say that I think it's important that we don't ever think that we have a right not to be offended, and that if we're feeling and living and enjoying our lives, we should be insulted and challenged and offended all the time. So the reason I wrote God No, and the reason I wrote Every Day is an Atheist Holiday, is kind of sort of because Glenn Beck told me to. And not because I wanted to say fuck you to Glenn Beck or any of that, but because I think that we can state our cases as strongly and as aggressively and as loud as we want, and that we can be as outspoken as we want, and we can proselytize as much as we want, and still allow other people to do that and other people to kind of do it. So it's just kind of the obvious thing. And for those who want to know about bullshit, we do intend to do the bullshit of bullshit. It turns out that we kind of have the rights to the name Penn and Teller Bullshit returned to us. It's not a very interesting story. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of producers and you sell stuff and Showtime and stuff, but it looks like we may have a chance, and another network, not Showtime. The reason that Showtime isn't interested in doing more is that the reruns do so well, and they're already paid for, that they go, well, we're already getting the ratings off you, what do we need? So I think the thing is if you want bullshit to come back on the air, oh, for Christ's sake, stop watching it. But we might do that whole thing. So I'm going to just, I've been rambling here for a while, but I'm going to take questions, and I'll talk about anything. I've kind of kept it atheist and skeptic oriented, but that doesn't mean if you want to ask me how magic tricks are done or anything, I'm pretty open to any question you have, and I'll go to that. I guess people are going to the microphones. Ask me a question.
Hey there, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for making bullshit.
Oh, thank you.
Introduced me to skepticism and libertarianism at the same time.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to say one advantage I can see that the religious community has over the atheist community as it stands now is that they gather very often. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious what you think about the idea of an atheist church, or a gathering space much like a church without all the godliness.
Well, you know, what that brings to mind is a stand-up comedy standard joke that when someone gets up and walks out during a comics act, you know, the guys in the 70s used to say, well, if you're looking for the toilet, you're standing in it. If you're looking for the atheist church, you're standing in it, man. I mean, that's what CFI is. That's what all these things are gatherings of people. I think using the word church is just a little too confusing. But one of the reasons, and that's really important, one of the reasons I think I became an atheist, you get this question. I imagine most of you have got this question where people say to you, or it's an apology, where they say, you become an atheist, I'm so sorry that religious people treated you so badly that you became an atheist. And I always say the way I became an atheist is that religious people treated me so well. Mm-hmm. I've been treated fabulously by religious people. My dad was a Christian his whole life and died a Christian. And my dad never got that memo. You know, 60s shrinks will tell you that your mom gives you a unconditional love and your dad gives you conditional love. My dad never heard that. He gave me unconditional love. When I became an atheist, it didn't change at all. He loved me with all his heart, everything he had. And when I started becoming an atheist, it was in my church. I belonged to the First Congregationalist Church in Greenfield, Massachusetts, which is also called the Church of the Covered Dish Supper. And my pastor there, when I went to youth group, encouraged me to read the Bible. And I always say, and I've been quoted this in a lot of places, I say it in a lot of places, but I believe when someone says to me they're thinking of exploring atheism, what should they do? I say read the Bible. Start at Genesis and read all the way through to that Revelations acid trip. And at the end of that, I think you're an atheist. If you're led by the hand through it by someone who alibis everything, then I think you can stay with religion. But if you just read it by yourself from beginning to end, especially if you're 16 years old, you are done with that. And I'll tell you, I am completely done with religion at the time that God says to Abraham, kill your son, and then says, just kidding. I'll just tell you, someone says to me, kill your son, they will never, ever get my respect again. I don't find that funny. And I really do find old ladies falling downstairs funny. I did the Aristocrats. Fisting to me is funny. But that's the kind of joke God can't play on me. But what I'm saying is you're absolutely right. And that is the point, one of the points to me of the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon shows you, like the Rolling Stones show you, how important form without content can be. The Mormons are fabulous at form, and their content is psychotic. The Stones are fabulous at form, and their songs are shitty, you know? But boy, do they have the form down. Okay, I think the pitch is okay in Brown Sugar. There's exceptions, never mind. I don't want to get into the whole Stones fighting thing. But I think you're completely right, but I would rather not call it church. I would rather call it CFI, I'd rather call it a collection of people.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
But it's really important, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll go over here.
Hi, Penn. There's a whole bunch of really thoughtful, brilliant, philosophic thinkers in this room. They're probably going to come up with some great questions. Probably not going to be one of them, though. It's more actually on the showbiz side.
On the what?
On the showbiz side?
Sure.
I've kind of lucked up. I'm doing game shows. I've got an absolutely talented partner who wants to do the Marcel Marceau role. We've got some great gimmicks. We work crowds really well. Definitely enjoying it.
Good.
But we are definitely low scale. We're at the bottom right now, and I'm wondering, I've gotten advice from absolutely everyone, and it always seems to be the same thing over and over again. Perform, follow your dreams, don't, and I mean, we're doing that. We are absolutely doing that. But my real question is if I've got the partner who has the skill, if all he needs for me to do is to be loud and abrasive and keep people entertained, what are some steps that I might go down? Like, what should I try that we might not have tried before?
You know, Charles Bukowski said that anybody that asked him about writing or sent writing samples to him, he would just say, you suck, quit right now. Because that was the kindest thing to do. Because if that could push you off it, then you should quit. If anything can push you off it. And there's a great deal of wisdom to that, I think. I don't think there's any secret at all, except for the one you said. And I believe that with stage performing, like being a pilot, flight hours seem to matter more than anything else. It's astonishing to me that George Burns, one of the great comedians of the 20th century, sucked for the first 30 years of his career. You know, he says when he found talent, and talent's name was Gracie. But George Burns was really not good. He just desperately wanted to be in show business, desperately. And he did every gig he could do. And he just put hours and hours and hours and hours on stage. And by the time he was 35 or 40, you know, he was starting to get good. And by the time he was 50, he was fabulous. And I really believe, one of the things that Teller and I did is I had this really romantic notion of what a team is. And I made a deal with Teller that we would not do any jobs outside of show business, no matter what. And that was easy for me to say, because I was a high school dropout and Teller was a tenured teacher. So I was not going to be offered any jobs whatsoever. So I was really saying to Teller was, don't work. And it was amazing because Teller and I played gigs that I bet you would turn down. We played gigs for $75 playing for felons, dangerous felons under the age of 16. It was a place that we had, and these were all children who had committed murder or rape. There were some armed robbers, but they were the good guys. And we were in a room that was high security with guards all over and bars and everything else. And we did our full hour show for them, juggling and magic and comedy. And afterwards, the people said that we, of all the people they had hired to do this job, we were the best because we were the only ones who finished. We did our full hour, goddammit, because we were terrified that if we didn't, we wouldn't get our $75. I really do believe that any chance you can get to get on stage, any gig you can do, completely wrong gig, a gig that you suck for, if they hire you to be a pole dancer, take the gig. The more time you spend on stage in front of people, the better you'll get. And that's all there is. There's nothing else to it. Phil Proctor of the Firesign Theater, I followed Firesign Theater around when I was homeless and hitchhiking and just juggling on street corners. I would hitchhike like some people do with the Grateful Dead. I would do with Firesign Theater. And I asked Phil Proctor what I should do to break into comedy. And he said, know everything and work all the time. So he just told me to just read everything. Some people think that, I've had very wise people say that comedy is no more than a good memory and the ability to free associate. But all I can say to you is just be on stage as much as you can. If you can find a job where you're on stage 5 hours a night, no matter what it is, a dive show, talking through anything. Carney, I was Carney Trash and street performer. And you do a show where you do 35 shows a day, fire eating. So it's stuff that you don't want to do, stuff that you don't even have your heart in. I think you get better. So that's all I can say on that. I'll go over here now.
All right, hi Penn.
Hi.
My question has to do with libertarianism.
Oh no.
On Real Time with Bill Maher,
Uh-huh.
You stated your position saying that you wouldn't use a gun, you wouldn't allow the government to use a gun in any way that you wouldn't yourself.
Yeah.
So you would use a gun to stop a rape, you would use a gun to stop a murder. Assuming that analogy is correct, why would you not use a gun to save a life? For example, giving someone an artificial heart or allowing them to have access to health care that might save their life. It just seems that, in a way, that's the same thing as stopping a rape or stopping a murder. It's just preventing someone from dying in a different way.
Absolutely. My problem with that is that I don't think I would do it. I don't think I would, if I could save a younger life with more quality life, if there was a 12-year-old that needed your heart, I don't think I would hold the gun on you and cut out your heart and give it to them. Even though it would save their life, even though it would give us more years, even if they were way smarter than you, I don't think I would do it. And my argument there, and this is a cop-out, my argument there is that argument about what I would use a gun for is essentially poetic and emotional. The reason I'm libertarian, and one of the reasons I might be libertarian is, when people attack me and say it's a utopian dream that can never ever work, That might be part of the reason. It's a very safe philosophical position to have because it's not being tested. It's possible that if it got tested and pushed down the line, I would change my point of view. But libertarianism for me is not anything to do with survival of the fittest. It's what to do, what you would use force for. And I believe that freedom is defined by stupidity. You never need freedom to do the thing that's smart and right and everyone agrees with. You only need freedom to be stupid. And freedom to me is a 16-year-old woman who is a math prodigy and an absolute genius and is going to get full scholarships and chooses instead to get pregnant and work at McDonald's. I think that those kinds of choices are really important. And I want people to be able to do things that I don't agree with, and that's really important to me. When you make the argument of health care and using a gun to make someone pay for someone else's health care, which is essentially using a gun to make someone else give their services in something you believe is right? Because if all doctors work free, that would be fine, and we'd save a lot of lives and be able to do it that way. I just don't trust myself to know what's best for society. And this also comes down to a very strong belief of mine, which I disagreed with Lou Reed on all the time, which is the end justifies the means. And that's essentially your argument in a nutshell. And I believe there is no end, there's only means. And you're also right that life is the means. And I'm afraid if I decide that using violence to accomplish this is okay, that I don't trust myself. And I will also say that this is something that you're right, I'm on very shaky ground with. And I wouldn't be surprised if politically my mind changes over the next little while, because it's already changed. I was kind of your standard Hollywood liberal for a long time, and then a lot of reading and a lot of discussion pushed me over to libertarian. But it's absolutely right, and your argument is perfect. It just doesn't feel right to me. That's the best I can do. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Have to talk about it on Twitter.
Hi, Mr. Jillette, and thanks for the food for thoughts. I'm very grateful that you're here, and I'm sorry I'm French Canadian, so I have a retard accent.
Don't blame yourself.
I've got some left. You had the chance to meet a lot of people that I'm sure everyone here admires a lot, like Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Lawrence Krauss, and there was
Hitchens?
another one. Hitchens, of course. And I was wondering if you could give us a few words on each of those individuals in order to, for us to have some knowledge about their personalities or something in your own point of view. But just by curiosity, because nobody here would probably have the chance to meet them, especially not Hitchens. So
Well,
that
thank
wasn't
you.
bad taste.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
I'll start with Hitchens. Nobody was better at speaking than Christopher Hitchens. Off the top of his head, he can start such a complex sentence and have everything be perfect right across the board. I don't know which story to tell about Hitchens. There's a bunch of them. And Hitchens is really, really important to me. When I was in the hospital and very, very, very sick, the book that gave me comfort was God Is Not Great. I read it again when I was in there. And Hitchens did like to drink, and I never had a drink. And we were doing an early cut of The Aristocrats, and I invited Hitchens over to see it in my home. And Hitchens showed up with a bottle of liquor. I say Jack Daniels, I don't know what he really drank, but hard liquor, not, And we were out on my porch. He came in out of a cab with a bottle in his hand, heading in to see the movie. And I stood there on the porch with Hitchens, and I said, Hitch, no one's ever brought liquor into my house. I really don't like it. I went to high school in the 70s. Everybody was high and stoned, and I promised myself that when I got to be an adult, I wouldn't have to be around it. Two things: I wouldn't have to be around liquor, and I wouldn't have to listen to the Grateful Dead. And I said, I really don't want you to bring that in. And Hitchens said, I really want to respect your religious beliefs, Penn. And I said, I don't see it that way. And he said, I know you don't, but it is a religious belief. And I said, boy, I'd like you not to bring that bottle into my house. And Hitchens stood there and looked at me and then said, and I cannot do this reading. See, that's the part I cannot give you the emotion properly, because when I say it, it sounds like an asshole, but it wasn't. He said, are you going to stop me? But he didn't say, are you going to stop me? He asked it like a real question, not like, who's the black private dick who's a sex machine for all the chicks, where you know the answer is Shaft. He really asked sincerely, are you going to stop me? And then I stood there saying, I don't know. And we stood there on the porch of my house with him holding a bottle of liquor and me standing in front of him. A match that is completely uneven. In any front, Hitchens beats me. And I just stood there looking at him. And I mean, the time that went by was a really, really long time. I mean, probably like 45 seconds, which for that kind of standoff is an unbelievable amount of time. We just stood there, and Hitchens just put the bottle down in the middle of my porch. Just right there. And he didn't hug me or say, let's go see the movie. And there was no sort of real revelation. He just kind of put the bottle down and walked in, and we watched the Aristocrats and had a great time and talked. And then he walked out and he picked up the bottle and he said goodnight, and that was it. Richard Dawkins is somebody that you have to remember that things hurt him. And that's the part that's really hard for me to remember about Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is one of those guys like Sam Kinison and Howard Stern, and those people that you think are 12 feet tall and bulletproof and would run headfirst into a hurricane. And they all would. And there's this thing that's said that drives me crazy about Dawkins and Stern, and not a sentence that's said, but an idea that's said, a feeling that's said, that they don't care what people think of them. They don't care, it doesn't bother them. I will tell you that every single bad word said about Howard Stern breaks his fucking heart. The definition of bravery is not absence of fear, it is action in the presence of fear. And Dawkins, when incredibly crazy shit was said about him in some of the TAM stuff, Dawkins did everything right and stood strong and did everything else, and then I looked him in the eyes and it fucking beat the living fucking shit out of him. And you will never know that from Richard Dawkins, because he is brave and he is strong, but not because it doesn't hurt him. People should know that you can hurt Richard Dawkins and hurt him badly. Sam Harris I have never met in the same room. I've never been in the same room with Sam. But we write emails, I don't know, once a week maybe? And my relationship with Sam Harris is him trying to convince me that the word spiritual should be an atheist word. He's winning. Who else you mentioned?
Lawrence Krauss.
Oh, Lawrence Krauss. Well, Lawrence Krauss is just so fucking smart. It's just insane to be around. We just wrote a bit with Lawrence Krauss. Does anybody know this song? None of you know this song. It's a song called the Soldier's Deck of Cards. Tex Ritter had a hit with it, and then Wink Martindale had a hit with it. He did. I'm sorry, he did. And it's a story about a soldier who's caught in a church with a deck of cards, and it's one of these talking songs over like a 2/6/5 thing. Just guitar, and during World War II, a soldier walked into a church and was looking at his deck of cards, and the sergeant came over and said, "Why'd you bring that deck of cards in here?" And the soldier looked up at him and said, "Well, when I'm in the field, I do not have a prayer book, I do not have the Bible, I do not have an almanac, but this deck of cards is all those things to me. The ace reminds me that there's one God. The 3 reminds me of the it goes on. And then the punchline is, that soldier was me. Wah, 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 wah. I love that. I love that song so much since I was a child, because there's nothing I love more in the world, and this includes my family, than an overextended metaphor. Oh, do I love it. So I've been talking to Teller forever about doing the atheist version of the Soldier's Deck of Cards. So starting, I think, in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we have all these movies coming out and shit, so I don't know if we'll get to it. But before the end of the year, we will have in the show the Atheist Deck of Cards. And it's me playing guitar, and, and Lawrence Krauss and I wrote it. And I'll just do the first part of it for you, because I should be able to remember it anyways. A while ago, Teller and I were attending a lecture by the theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss. Suddenly, Krauss looked down and said, "Teller, you've been fiddling with that deck of cards since I began speaking. Do you find me so boring you have to amuse yourself with trivial tricks and manipulation?" Teller stood up and addressed Lawrence and the entire audience and said, "Not at all, Dr. Krauss," Teller began. "I'm listening to every word you say. I don't carry a pad of paper or a cell phone, but as a magician, I always have my deck of cards. And I use the deck of cards and the knowledge of magic to take notes. Please allow me to recap what you've covered so far." Teller fanned the cards out, looked down and said, "You're a well-known atheist. And as I look over the faces of the cards, I notice there's no God among them. The universe of my deck, like the universe of your speech, contains kings, queens, millions of number combinations, even a couple of jokers, but no God can be found." And then it goes through, and we have the 6-card repeat, which is the thing where you throw 6 cards away, and we do that for the cosmological constant. How can there be, when space increases, the numbers stay the same? And we end up with the Higgs boson and the Large Hadron Collider, which we explain with card tricks. So Teller's doing card tricks all the way through, and then it ends with Teller saying, and then Teller took a breath and said, "Imagine my hands represent quantum nothingness." Lawrence Krauss looked down and said, "Teller, sit down and shut up." It's about an 8-minute bit, and it is nothing but physics, astrophysics, particle physics, atheist propaganda. And we're going to do it on stage in Vegas. And I had to get Lawrence Krauss to write it with me because I'm too stupid. And I guess that's covering most of them. But all the people that you mentioned, the most important thing is I'm not fit to eat shit off their shoes. If you ever get a chance to meet any of them, blow them.
Hi, Penn. I just wanted to ask you about the your early days of performing with the Asparagus Valley Cultural Society, and also kind of specifically with your early street performing.
I did a lot of street performing. I'm from a small town in western Massachusetts, and the first person I met in show business was me. There was nobody. I mean, the projectionist at the theater was the closest we had. And so as soon as I got, I mean, there's only two things I wanted out of life, and that was to be from New York City and to be Jewish. I wanted to be Lenny Bruce, you know. Everybody that's great in comedy is little. And I was this, you know, big, dumb goyim. I learned to juggle. And I got to be pretty good. And I thought that if you got good enough at juggling, like the art talent scouts would just come to your house and say, okay, you're a professional, you're in show business now. Wow, you can do a really nice 5 clubs. Come on, get in show business. And so I left school before finishing, and on a plea bargain. And I for a while, I went to Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey, greatest show on earth, Conn College. And then I just lived hitchhiking. I hitchhiked across North America 4 or 5 times, including hopping a train in Montreal, which was horrible because I didn't know it was going north. And then I was stuck on this train, freezing in the middle of the winter for 5 hours, going through your wonderful, what do you call it, wilderness. And then I finally got off the train, and I'm going to tell you this story, and you're not going to believe me, and you probably shouldn't because I'm a liar, but this happens to be true, whether you believe it or not. I was with Mike Motion, who is MacArthur genius juggler, who I taught him to juggle. He'll deny it, but I did. We were together hitchhiking, and we got off the train, and we hitchhiked to a highway, but we had no idea where we were. We were picked up by a drunk who wouldn't talk to us. And we got to the highway, and we're standing on the highway, and there's one sign there, and Mike Motion has the map. Now remember, we're 17 years old. There's no iPhones. We got the map, and Mike's got it out, and we don't even know within a 200-mile radius where we are. We have no idea. I mean, if you asked us where we were, we would say Canada. That's it. That's all we knew. So I say to Mike Motion, find the town on the map. Find the town. And he said, what's the name of the town? And I said, Sortie. Absolutely true. That's the level of stupid we were. You know, if you speak 3 languages, you're trilingual. 2 languages, you're bilingual. 1 language, you're from the USA. We had no idea. But I just, as I kind of answered over here, very similarly, I just worked all the time. I mean, I would go into any club that had a band and ask if I could do 5 minutes in between the band in exchange for an order of French fries. You know, I would set up where it was illegal to juggle and do juggling shows and try to get laughs and pass the hat. I would, if there was anybody doing any show anywhere, I would do it. And I should also say, I want to say this in defense of my parents. I was homeless. I mean, I could live with my parents, but I didn't have I slept on the streets, and I hitchhiked across the country, and also up and down, everywhere. And even though I was living like that, I called my mom and dad every day. And my mom and dad cared where I was and they took very good care of me. And I'm amazed now that I have children of my own, how brave they were to let their son go out and find what he was to do. But I have a lot of street performing stories, but I guess I'm just going to tell you the one Sortie one, because it seems so perfect to tell in Canada and so embarrassing that I will just move over here. I'll answer one more question. Are we done? Is that what you want to do?
Yes, I'm sorry. I really hate to do this, but we have run out of time. We now have to take it to the book signing. But I do need to remind you all that as a privilege to all the members, there will be a reception right after this We will all members with their membership card will be able to walk down to O'Grady's and have a little reception where you can ask more questions to Penn and Teller.
But I won't answer them.
No guarantees
the
you'll
fuck
answer it. You'll just ask and ask away.
you just ask. Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't, end on a punchline like you're supposed to. I guess I did. I'll say it again. Sorty, thank you.